on my networks may not have seen you before. If they haven't, they're crazy. But now that they're finally learning who you are for the first time, just tell them a little bit about your background and how you got started in disclosure.
Well, I'm an emergency doctor and worked in emergency medicine and trauma. But, I had an experience with one of these objects when I was younger. Always had a lifelong interest. My first sighting, I was 8 maybe in North Carolina before you were born in 1963. But it was quite remarkable. Daytime, close up, clearly an extraterrestrial vehicle, seamless. And so I had an interest my entire life. And eventually in 1990, I started the CE5 Contact Initiative, which there's an app called CE5 Contact you can get that is an outreach program from humans to these civilizations to create a peaceful dialogue and liaison between humans and these civilizations. Because frankly, in studying this up to that point, I realized that the United States and other governments had dropped the ball. They had military relationship, had kept it secret, and nobody was paying attention to the fact that the UFOs themselves are just like a car that brought you here. Who's inside the car? Billy is. Or who's inside these spacecraft? Why are they here? And so that was the genesis of it. Now, in 1992, on a beach in Florida near Pensacola, we had a major event, CE5 contact event. There were 4 ET craft in the sky that were seen by about 60 people on a training expedition we were doing, including a couple of Air Force colonels and pilots. And that made it onto the front page of the Pensacola paper, the photo. That then led to people in the intelligence community contacting me, some friendly people and some hostile people. But that sort of opened that whole vein to it. And then a year later, when President Clinton became sworn in 93, I was asked by the director of a think tank here near the Pentagon to set up attend a briefing for the director of the CIA. Then at that time, R. James Woolsey, for the president, under cover of a dinner party with me and my wife and the host and his wife and the CIA director and his wife. And it was at that time I learned, my life turned upside down 30 years ago, because I realized that the president and the director of the CIA and then others I subsequently met with were being blocked from information on this subject, and that the organization running these covert programs were doing so without oversight from the Congress or the president, and were therefore illegal and unconstitutional. So that really was the genesis of the Disclosure Project. In those days, we called it Project Starlight. If you look at the Clinton Library was sued by AP and Associated Press, and they released these documents. And so it was initially a private briefing process that I did in my spare time as an emergency doctor, meeting with various members of Congress, people at the Pentagon, elsewhere, to get this information to them and to encourage disclosure of it by the U.S. government. So the genesis of this goes all the way back to the early 1990s, 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I know when I talked to you on the phone just maybe a few weeks ago, building up to this live, interview, you had mentioned that you had to start taking some of these government officials and some of these witnesses through the skiff. Can you talk about that? Are you able to talk about that on live air?
I can. I have to be careful. So about 16 months ago, a very senior person in the intelligence community here, who works literally with the black budget and oversees the 3-letter agencies, CIA, NSA, NRO, reached out to me because a law previously had been passed, as you know, by the Congress to get a report done on UFOs and UAPs, whatever the name of the day is, and to basically find out what was going on with this. So once the Pentagon confirmed the Tic Tac footage and this UFO footage, very quickly there were people in the Congress, like Senator Gillibrand and others, who put through a law requiring the Director of National Intelligence as well as the Pentagon to report on this. So those folks had been going, I'll be blunt, they had been gaslit. The people doing the investigations, who were, of course, not members of Congress, these are senior people in the intelligence community and staff, and they were basically being given no information, which is predictable. This is what we ran into in the 90s. So they contacted me and asked me to help provide what's called actionable intelligence, details of where these facilities are, where these projects are centered, who's involved, what are the project code names and numbers, which I have, and a number of these sort of issues. National Press Club on June 12th from 2 to 4 p.m. The whole world can see that for free.
Right.
The facilities list. And so I had provided this to these investigators in the government. And there are 145 top secret facilities or bases where these operations have gone, as well as corporate locations. So which corporations are involved, where's the reverse engineering taking place, et cetera. So all of that was started 16 months ago. Now, what has helped more recently is that the Congress and the president put through a bill 2 days before Christmas in 2022, the National Defense Authorization Act, that had a provision for top secret people, whistleblowers, or people who had non-disclosure agreements in the military or even corporate world to go through a process where they would go to this office, AARO, Arrow, and the SCIF there near the Pentagon, and provide their information. So that process was, the law was passed late December 2022. The first folks started going in January. And so I've been helping coordinate that, and also very clearly encouraging whistleblowers to come forward. Now, not come forward because they're hostile to having this come out, because they're part of the, I hate to say it, illegal project.
Gotcha.
Then they're the ones who are cooperating, giving us information, but they don't want to come forward yet because the laws need to be tightened up for their personal protection and security, because many have gotten death threats.
Right.
Their security around their pensions or their financial assets, and also where it's very clear that if they were found to have done something illegal, that there'd be a period of amnesty.
Gotcha.
So we're recommending a further bill be passed to provide these sort of protections for these whistleblowers. And then there's another category, and those are the people who are willing to go through the process now and go to the SCIF and provide information.
Right.
Now, out of a few of those, there are a handful that are willing to come out publicly.
Gotcha.
Okay, at this press conference.
Right.
So you're dealing a distillation. So it's now they'll give you a number. We now have 752 whistleblowers and witnesses that we have either previously interviewed or identified or have contacts to.
Right.
And some are preeminent.
Right.
For example, there's a senior official in a Fortune 100 company that would like to share what he knows, but recently, after reaching out, he has had explicit threats, death threats to himself and his family. So this is why we're encouraging the Congress and the president to step up the pace of the protective laws for these people's security and safety.
Right, that's phenomenal. And just for the viewers, the SCIF, when we say the SCIF, can you break it down for them? Because we know what it is, but
well, SCIF is a secure compartmented information facility. So they're all around the city and other parts of the United States. And they're basically places where when you go in, you put your phones and all electronics aside. It's a sealed facility, so no electromagnetic signals can go in or out.
Right.
And it's a place where top secret information can be exchanged and shared in a secure fashion.
Exactly.
That's basically what a SCIF is.
Kind of like
it's
a
not a
neutral
boat,
ground.
folks.
It's not.
There's a SCIF that's a boat. This is something else.
Right. This is really top secret. This is where you can really share information and knowing that nobody can hack into it. Nobody can record it. They can't use those sophisticated cameras with those sophisticated mics outside the building to hear what's inside. Everything bounces off. It's pretty secure, which is very good.
It's not secure from this illegal group because they're using. Let me just make.
They have some really high tech.
They have what are called scalar or longitudinal electromagnetic systems that can penetrate anywhere.
Right.
And this is one of the problems.
Wow.
Now, by the way, back in the mid to early 1990s, I met a man who was CEO of electronics company who in the 70s had invented a neutrino light detector that got a national security order placed on it, and the National Reconnaissance Office seized it under national security order, and they put them on the satellites that are up there so that they can track and monitor these extraterrestrial vehicles as they come out of, let's call it, trans-dimensional space-time into 3D. When they do that, there's a burst of neutrino light, and that allows them to pick up on them. And so those are then connected to weapon systems. And you hear about all these crash retrievals. Well, now in our archive, we have 121 incidences that we've documented, many with whistleblowers still living, of these objects being tracked, hit, and downed that are extraterrestrial. So, which is another whole discussion, and that is the danger of having an unsupervised and unauthorized operation with those kind of technologies that are really creating an existential threat to all life on Earth. I will say it very bluntly. It's a very dangerous, nonsensical thing happening. For civilian, for the entire military. And this guy is the top guy. And I did a briefing in his conference room at the Pentagon, and he flat out told me he was denied access, and he thought that there were actions being taken that were dangerous. I said, oh, you better believe it. And I discussed this with him, the fact that we were tracking and targeting these objects who are frankly completely not hostile. But I will tell you, the fact that they're not hostile towards humans and Earth does not mean that they are happy with what this clandestine group is doing. Because we're actually, if people want to know where the threat is, go look in the mirror. Humans have become an existential threat to ourselves with what we're doing to this planet, environmentally and otherwise, but also now potentially to other planets. So I think that this is a very complex problem. And one of the big problems with the news media, everything has to be boiled down into a 30 to 90 second soundbite. And the issue is so complex. And by the way, it's another problem with members of the Congress and White House. Is that they're so busy, and yet the issue has to get. So this is a technical problem. I'm a doctor and not a tech guy, but we need some really good tech people to help us with that.
I may have some people on my team that can help with that. With the project that I've done with searching for space anomalies, we've downloaded over 1 million images from the NASA and European Space Agency Caltech servers, and cataloged them and categorized about 50 to 60,000 anomalies that are searchable, linkable, downloadable, and everything else. We did over the course of 7 years. But we do have the capability of doing something like that.
We want to stand this up in the next year. And we're still collecting data. I will tell you, there's on average 2 to 4 new top secret whistleblowers coming into our system every month. We're adding a similar number of top secret facilities. Let me give people an idea so this is not vague. There's a man who is going to be speaking here. He was an Army guy at Fort Bragg. He was taken into an underground facility where there was a kind of a sonic electromagnetic anti-gravity operation with this massive, thousands and thousands of pounds heavy, looked like a granite cubic rectangular object floating. And he knew the name of the area where it is. So see, every time one of these whistleblowers comes forward who've actually been in the system, whether it was an accidental event in his case or worked in it, we grab that information and put it on our facilities list. So when you see this facilities list that we're going to be releasing, keep in mind that every dot on that map and everyone in the list is backed up from witness testimony and files. But of course, those we can't release without the whistleblower's permission. So one of the things that's a problem for me personally is that having debriefed all these hundreds of top secret witnesses, but when they're not willing to come forward publicly, like has recently happened with one of them, what happens is that the best I can do is provide the information, but what we really need is a process, an open hearing. And this, I've had a conversation with a member of Congress in the House, is to have and this is news, to have an open hearing process, not in a skiff, where these witnesses can be subpoenaed and be sworn in under oath and come forward, and the whole public will know about it. Because I think the top secret process is dangerous in the sense that if it's top secret going through a Pentagon office like Aero, how much of that will ever get out to the American public? How much of it will actually get to the members of Congress? Because I know that there's a letter we have from the chair and co-chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee recently, written in April, where they were very unhappy with the progress and the reporting back out of Aero to them. I have this letter, and we can show it to you. My assistant can get it to you. And I think this
power to cover up these UFO and UAP crash retrievals and so forth without any oversight from the front government.
All of them. So let me explain how, a little bit of history here. When you start dealing with top secret operations, they're very highly compartmentalized. And there's special access projects. And as you know from our documentary, Unacknowledged, there are ones that are unacknowledged special access projects. Now, within those, and those mean that if you're not in the project, you're not to tell anyone outside of it. Those have been, and not just on the UFO issue, on a number of issues. Around Contra, for example. But now there's a branch of those that went rogue. And the rogue ones don't have any legal oversight. So a lot of people confuse like the black budget of the United States, which is very, very secret. That the legal black budget is legal, is known by the president, his guys, and the chief oversight committees and members of the Senate. Gotten off the table and then is walking amongst us. It's a monstrous operation. And some of the guys that I know who recently have been out in the field trying to penetrate these programs have texted me on encrypted systems and said, wow, these people are thugs. Using the word thugs. I said, absolutely they are. So that's what we've been dealing with now for 30 years. It's good to see there's some people coming forward talking about it. We have a Raytheon guy from the South Pole. We have a guy who, two Raytheon people showed him hovering at Fort Irwin, California. These triangular objects that were anti-gravity, and he's going to be there. And we have a Marine who was his platoon responded in a humanitarian mission in Indonesia after the earthquake and tsunami in 2009. And they were deployed to an area and dropped in by helicopter and came across a 300-foot diameter. Now that's executed. Now we have the names of all 6 of the platoon members. One of them wrote and said he, is in fear of his life. I will tell you, all 6 of them were told, if you speak of this, you will be executed. Now, this man who's coming forward, Michael Herrera, is incredibly brave. He was only 19 or 20 when this happened. He's about 33 now. He's a very brave person. Very few people have been willing to step forward on that. Because it exposes 2 major things. The existence of a secret Air Force capability using these craft from Northrop Grumman and Lockheed and Raytheon and others, but also this rogue, most dangerous part of the rogue operation that is globally breaking all kinds of laws and engaged in violent crimes, drug running, and clearly criminal activities.
This disclosure movement is really so important because, like you just talked about, the amount of crimes that are involved for them to create these black budget projects and these secret projects.
And the rule of law.
I
mean, if we don't have the rule of law, what are we living in the jungle again? Aren't we? So, I mean, this becomes sort of a civilizational crisis, in my opinion. It way exceeds the risk of China, Russia, Ukraine, Iran. but it isn't on the radar fully yet by the members of Congress or other capitals and leaders or the United Nations or the White House. This is there's this the reason I've always been in a hurry to do this is that I know that if this stays on the course it's on, where it's going to end up, and it's not going to be nice. It's going to be a catastrophe.
Exactly. When benefits of the technology could be released to mankind that you feel are being held back.
Well, we just released a few days ago a documentary film called The Lost Century and How to Reclaim It. The key thing, how to reclaim it. And The Lost Century is an expose of 100 years, is why I call it The Lost Century, of since the time of Tesla, of very advanced technologies that have been seized and sequestered, inventors have been assassinated, and the patent laws have been abused to seize them under national security provisions. I have a copy of one that we show in the film. So everyone can right now go and see that film. It's on all platforms, iTunes, Apple, Google, Amazon, whatever.
Right.
Now, the reason that's so important, it outlines what we've lost in 100 years, but also, importantly, I'm one of these people, I don't like to just kvetch about a problem.
Right.
I think we need to show what's the solution.
Exactly.
All right. So that was the Disclosure Project, is the solution to these illegal secrecy. In this film, we talk about what the solution should be, the pathway to develop or acquire. If anyone listening has one of these 0 point or quantum energy devices, contact us immediately. We have people with funding in place to get it out now, if we can prove it. It's ready. I mean, it's substantial funding. So, but it has to be released open source.
Yes, that's the only way. Open source is the only way.
Open source is the only way, because if you go through patent or intellectual property secrets, it's going to get seized. Now, most of these inventors, here's the problem. They're very, very bright with physics or electromagnetic engineering, but they don't understand the strategic landscape and the security landscape. And what I want to do is combine what our expertise on the strategic and security landscape, so we can get out safely, with the people who have the genius in engineering and physics to create preferably a solid state version, which of course Floyd Sweet had. If you look up in our movie, you'll see this whole expose about Floyd Sweet's device, which was real. But I think that when you look at that, what are the implications of all that being disclosed? Just that. It would end poverty on the planet in 20 years. And I'm not talking, poverty in the United States is not poverty.
That's not real poverty.
India and Africa and South America and parts of Asia and South America. So, right now there are 3 billion people on the earth that have no means to even cook their food. They're cutting down the forest and the desert shrubs to make charcoal. So it's a huge problem. And so I think one of the big questions is, if we can bring these technologies out, given the internet and it's open source, then thousands of companies will spring up, just like the internet was open source. Thousands of tech companies sprung up and created hundreds of trillions of dollars in industries, everything from Amazon to Alphabet to whatever. So when this happens, it'll be a tide that lifts the whole world up. Now, it will also end all pollution on Earth. I mean, literally all pollution, air, water, ground, because these technologies, because they're, quote, free energy, and there's a chairman of a major corporation in America who wants to come forward, who has said point blank, yes, we have those free energy devices to us. Now, he's afraid to come forward because these corporate thugs are more dangerous than the assassins out of the CIA, trust me. So I think that this is something that if the people unite around that effort, we should be able to create a civilization within 10 to 20 years where there would be no poverty, no pollution, sustainability, but wouldn't be just, windmills and solar panels, which ain't going to get us there.
No.
It's the energy density, and it's so expensive. This would be something quite inexpensive, would fit on your table, run your house, run your factory, run your car. And would have zero energy costs and no pollution, because it's pulling energy out of the fabric of space-time, what's called the quantum vacuum or 0 point energy. which was proven, by the way, in the 50s by Professor Casimir.
Right.
So this documentary, I encourage everyone to look at as soon as possible. It's called The Lost Century and How to Reclaim It. We actually have motion graphics to show what the world looks like in 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, 1,000 years.
It was beautiful.
Yeah. Have you seen it?
Yeah, The Lost Century. Yeah.
Okay.
So I've seen it. You gave me the link about 2 weeks ago. Yeah, and I watched it. Amazing guys, make sure you go watch The Lost Century. You can watch it on Apple. You can watch it pretty much on anything. The Lost Century, Dr. Stephen Greer. It's an amazing documentary. The way that you did the graphics in there to show those projections, because it gives a person like the ability to kind of see the future, what it could be. What are we missing here?
And that's what we could have had by, the irony of all of this, 0-point free energy, the electrogravitic anti-gravity that was mastered in October 1954.
Wow. How
do I know this? The top scientists at the world's largest Department of Defense lab here, the Naval Research Labs, which Thomas Edison started, when he was in one of the vaults, he saw the documentation that stated we mastered gravity control, anti-gravity, October 1954. Wow. So I was born in June 1955. So by the time I was born, we should not have had jet engines, rockets, cars with internal combustion engines, coal, gas, oil, nuclear, wind, solar, geothermal, all of it. Now, the good news is it's like the ET said to Colonel Corso when he said, "What's in this for me?" And the ET said, "A new world if you can take it." But who's going to be the losers here? Well, you do have hundreds of trillions of dollars in assets in petrodollar and oil and gas, public utilities. So one of the problems with this is when people talk about a disruptive technology like, a ride app, like Uber or Lyft. I mean, it replaced taxis. Right. But this would totally transform the planet, but there will be people who will be disrupted. Okay. And I think now not the big corporations that have already made thousands of trillions of dollars over 150 years, but the average worker, let's say you're an oil rig worker or a public utility worker. There needs to be a plan that as these technologies come out, we provide the training and support to transition them from those smokestack industries to this new high-tech energy sector. Because there will be huge jobs resulting from that. But we have to think this through. And it needs to be compassionate to the rank and file people who would be adversely affected.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's something I've said for 25, 30 years. But that can be done. I mean, we can absolutely do that as a people, not here, but just globally. Globally, we can come together as a people and do this. But ultimately, it will grow the economy and the world's poverty. I predict in about 20 years would be gone. Gone, completely gone. Africa, everywhere. Right. So this is very good. I always tell people, this is extremely. This is why I'm such an optimist. I know these exist, and I know what the world will look like when it can be disclosed. And it really, I have now 12 grandchildren and 4 daughters. Congrats. It would be a whole new world if this could happen. And it would be a wonderful world if they're used for peace. Exactly. Now, I will say, caveat, in my conversations with people in the military connected to these projects, I agree that the propulsion systems should remain classified. Now, what do I mean there? If you have an object like that Tic Tac, that's Lockheed Skunk Works, by the way. It was not extraterrestrial. Newsflash. We know who made it, where it came from. It's not alien. No. And we have a top secret witness who actually in 1991 saw that thing being offloaded from a C-130 transport vehicle in the Azores. Oh, man. Oh, yeah. You're going to see the drawing of this. He doesn't want to come forward yet. He's scared. Okay. But he absolutely saw it. And we have another account of that identical object from multiple witnesses from 1967 in Pennsylvania. Wow. So that's an old one. All right. So now I know that when I've spoken to people like David Fravor, who is the F-18 Hornet pilot. He insists there's no way we had anything that could move like that. But of course, he was a jet pilot, and he wasn't read into these compartmented operations. So, I always let people have their opinion. But, to be honest with you, if you haven't been briefed up to that level, and if chairman of the Senate Intelligence and Armed Services and White House presidents and generals haven't been told, I'm quite sure a pilot in the Navy would not have been read in.
No.
So I think this is for the disconnect, because it seems so unbelievable to people who are your conventional pilots and military folks. But the truth is that that's the nature of top secret, special, compartmented information. It's highly compartmented. But I think that is why the significance of disclosure is not just to correct these legal and other problems. It's really to transform the way humans live on the planet in preparation for humans becoming interstellar.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, there's a long-term trajectory that if we don't muck up the whole situation, right, and create an extinction level event from our stupidity, we have this amazing boundless future that's so beautiful waiting for us.
Oh, it can be incredible.
Oh, it is. It will be. I've seen it.
I'm optimistic as well. I don't believe in the doom and gloom. It's coming to an end and it's the end times. I really don't believe in that. And this is the best time to be alive. And I think that we're on the precipice, and people like you are really pushing the forefront and getting us to the level where we can break through and usher ourselves back to a golden age. And I think we will definitely do it because we've done it before.
Global golden age.
Yes.
It'd be like the Shambhala kingdom, the mythical. I think it might have existed. That was in that small area of the planet for the whole planet.
Yeah.
Because once we reach the point where there's no poverty and there's superabundance, people can then turn their attention towards creative pursuits, the development of higher states of consciousness, meditative states, travel through space peacefully. The trick here, however, with humans is that in these covert programs, the tragedy is these wonderful technologies that could be used for good have been turned to war. And if you look at the course of human history in the modern technological era, almost every breakthrough, atomic, nuclear, had its first application in a weapon system. And so the problem that's got to get fixed, and this gets to be a very important social, even spiritual, civilizational discussion, is all this is poised. It is coming out. This is all coming out. We know this is coming out. I'm going to say something a little bit that's dangerous, but I'll be discreet in how I describe it. But this is all going to come out one way or another. The question is, we need to begin having a conversation with global leaders. That's why I'm reaching out to people in the UK and other countries about what does this look like going after all this is then known. Is it another arms race? Do we take these technologies and weaponize them? Do we weaponize them against extraterrestrial peoples, which has already happened? We have to be very careful, because once you cross the nuclear threshold, past the nuclear into these technologies, they are potentially significantly more lethal than a hydrogen bomb. And so we have to begin to ask the question, what are we going to be when we grow up as a species? We're sort of in an adolescent rambunctious phase, right? And unruly humans. But if we reach this point of maturity and what's been called a level 1 civilization, Michikaku and others, where we're peaceful globally, we're fixing the environment, then there's hundreds of thousands of years potentially of unbroken evolution and exploration. But if we don't get this right, I will tell you, it is the end. We're going to hit an extinction level event. So when I say that the stakes involved with this cannot be overstated in their importance, I mean it. It absolutely it cannot be overstated.
You're right. There are theoretical physicists and astrophysicists that have claimed that based on just sheer numbers and civilizations that are out there in our own Milky Way that have reached a high level and have actually destroyed themselves. There could be literally thousands or maybe even millions of destroyed planets out there where the people destroyed themselves, and they're just sitting there barren wastelands.
Well, some people think that happened on Mars very, very long, millions of years ago. There's some evidence for that. So, there are lessons here. We need to learn from history or we're going to repeat it.
Yeah.
But I think the extraterrestrial civilizations currently involved with surveilling and looking at the Earth, a lot of people ask, why are they always around our atomic and nuclear facilities? Roswell, let's not forget, was the 509th Bomber Squadron, only place in the world where there was an atomic bomb in 1947. What were the ET so concerned about? Because they have seen this happen, where we get on that path, we stay on that path, and that civilization is extinct. But they also know that once you get on that path, it's not far to go to the next level, where you then have interstellar, these so-called trans-dimensional technologies that allow for space travel.
Right.
Because space travel has to be many, many times the speed of light. We understand how that happens. If you want to visualize a piece of paper, here's a point here, 1,000 light years is another point. You're not going this way, you're folding the piece of paper, space-time. You're folding it. That's how you do it. We know how this happens. It's called entanglement, quantum entanglement, but on a macro scale with the whole spacecraft. So basically, when you reach that point, if you're still violent and savage, like humans are, you're now a threat elsewhere.
That's right.
See, so I always tell people, humans tend to be extremely narcissistic, and they don't do well looking through the eyes of others, which is to me the heart of compassion of the Buddha. You have to be able to look at, how does this look, this enterprise on Earth right now, look to an advanced civilization that has come this way before us and survived? I'm afraid that we look like we're in great trouble, and I think we are. I joked back in the 90s, I'm an emergency doctor, and I know an emergency when I see one.
Right.
and we are in a global emergency writ large. But most people are not awake to that yet. And I think part of what the Disclosure Project is devoted to doing is putting out the evidence and the information, but also economically, spiritually. So I think those are all big undertakings that need to, the conversation on that needs to be joined now.
Definitely. How do you think, and this will be the last question before we close, but how do you think this disclosure, can actually help, how can disclosure actually help with the prevention of government agencies like the Pentagon giving these private corporations these contracted jobs so they can hide them, and then we can't get a FOIA. We can't request information on these because they're private. Do you think that we'll see a day when this communication or this collaboration or collusion that's happening to keep these things secreted away and compartmentalized, do you think there'll be a day when we can break that reign that they've got on that and make it to where we have access to see what's happening?
If we can get these open hearings, or even if there is a classified process first that leads to open, we have the people who can blow the whistle on that, how it's structured, and then there could be reforms in the law that prevent it. I do know that a clock has been put on this, and this is the sensitive thing I didn't refer to, and I have to be very careful. But I'm working with a number of teams here in Washington who don't know each other. All right. And advising and providing evidence and information to them. But there's one team that absolutely is hoping this gets resolved through the constitutional process, through what we're doing, perhaps with this RICO civilian lawsuit. If there are any attorneys out there who want to join us, contact us. You'll see that we have 50 some attorneys now. We can use more with different specialties. We also need private investigators, former prosecutors, etc. But I think that when we look at that, if that can't get resolved by pretty much the end of this year or early next year, there are some folks who are very fed up in the special operations and forces community that are going to move. But that can be dangerous and could result, frankly, in a bloodbath.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is move this very quickly. I know those guys very much hope we succeed. and don't have to do what they've been chartered to do.
Right.
So I'm only referring to this obliquely to say that, having been involved with this for 30 years, well, first of all, I won't be alive 30 more years, but I know that this process needs to actually come to a head in a proper channel. Constitutional, legal oversight, White House, other countries. I'm having conversations with people connected to very senior government in the United Kingdom and elsewhere. But I think this is why we need to understand that this needs to be taken very, very seriously by people in the UFO, UAP community, but also come together to do it in a coherent way.
Right.
And the more, I will also make an appeal, any of you who know or are folks who've been involved with this, with a corporation or intelligence or military operation, should contact us, because the more people who come together, I think a very poor way to do this are lone wolves coming out one at a time. But when you come together as a group, these are people who don't know each other, but have different parts of this picture from different agencies, services, corporations. That's what we're doing this week and weekend at the National Press Club on Monday. Then what happens, it reinforces each other. Whereas if you have an extraordinary experience as an intelligence operative or military personnel or a Lockheed or Raytheon official, and you do it by yourself, people go, it doesn't seem, like that's possible. Whereas if you have 5 or 10 or 100, I want this to eventually become a torrent instead of a trickle. Where hundreds and then thousands of people just come forward. Now, a lot of people are afraid, let me say this, that they can't do that. I believe they can. And the foundation of the Disclosure Project, which I have not talked about with you much, is the unless otherwise directed letter, UNOD, we wrote to the Clinton administration and all federal agencies in the Pentagon in late 1997, 1998. We gave them 60 days to respond. And the unless otherwise directed is a military technique that basically says, unless otherwise directed, here's my assessment and here's what I'm going to do. It's written that way so no one has to make an overt action.
Gotcha.
You see? So we did this, and what we said was, these projects are being run illegally. Therefore, the non-disclosure agreements and the secrecy oaths that anyone has taken, corporate or governmental, are completely nullified.
Yeah, they're invalid.
They're invalid because the underlying operation is illegal.
Gotcha.
Now, if you're just someone who's a foot soldier in this, a Delta Force guy or a Navy SEAL, or someone who's working at a corporation as a part of this huge operation, you wouldn't know that. We know it because having briefed people like the CI director and senators and senior flag officers, generals, admirals at the Pentagon, we know that it's that way. So we're going to establish that as a proof, right? Now, at that point, everyone is exonerated. That you can leave one of these underground bases with part of an ET craft, an ET body, documents, and your own information of other 121 crash retrieval cases. To the Senate, to the White House, to the Pentagon, and on Monday I'll be handing it off personally to a member of Congress. For the House of Representatives.
That's amazing.
So that's and here's good news, folks. At this point, there can be no excuses. The U.S. government now will have in their possession everything they need to get to the bottom of this, and I mean everything. Where the northern helicopter base is in the Nevada test range, where they were deployed to retrieve both man-made crashed UFOs and extraterrestrial ones, because the witness who was there gave us that data, and it's in there. So all of that is there now, and now the people, you guys, us, just ordinary folks like me, need to now say, okay, the government must be accountable. They've been given the information. No more excuses. Do it.
At the end of the day, the government actually is supposed to work for us.
Yes.
They've got us tricked into thinking that we work for them.
I know.
And people believe it.
Like they're our masters.
No, exactly. No, they're the servants.
Yes, of course.
We're the bosses.
Correct. And, it's funny because my dad was half Native American, and my mom's family were some of the original prisoner of war with the British.
Wow.
My father was hand-to-hand combat on amphibious landing units in World War II in the Pacific, and had terrible PTSD over it, frankly. But who wouldn't? And but I always tell people, this is a time where we need to come together, but instead of a violent enterprise, a peaceful one of disclosure, and the rule of law. But the only way the Congress and the president is going to act is that they hear from you guys. So here's my other request. Please write to your 2 senators and your member of the House of Representatives, your own representative, and to the president, asking them to take action and tell them that the Disclosure Project has provided them all the actual intelligence they need to get to the bottom of this. We've spent millions of dollars and 30 years assembling this. It's now been handed off on hard drives.
Yeah, beautiful. And tell everyone again where this event is this weekend and what they can expect.
Yeah, and so you can give them a link.